conferences, you know, we love events. And events are good because they bring people together. They create a platform for people to mingle, to network, and that's very important for any journalist. I go to conferences because I meet people. I love the exchange that I have with the folks, with the relevant focus to that specific issue that's being discussed in that event. And you study people, you gain information, you listen to people's insights, you form your own opinion, of course, but as we know, journalists are not they're not expected to share their personal views, but we need to know a lot of background about any issue. So if you want to understand issues, if you want to be aware of the kinds of insights people have about a problem, then you come to these conferences to understand them. I would say today's conference on online journalism is very useful for people like me, because I am learning about how the news sites in this country are doing, what are their challenges, what are their struggles, what are their successes, what are their ratings, you know, who is who in the Uzbek online journalism in this country. So in that sense, it's very, very useful. But online journalism is journalism now. I mean, you know, journalism is moving towards multimedia, digital media. In about 3-4 years, I would argue that the most content we see online will be images and video. So many news organizations around the world are already strategizing to respond to that growing demand. You know, the age of social media is moving towards something even more complex. The news is becoming a personal commodity. You know, something that we've always said, mass media is changing, it's shifting. It's going to become personal media, which means that as journalists, we're not going to address masses anymore. We're going to target an individual who knows what he or she wants, who has specific need for specific news and analysis. So journalism is very difficult today because it's very multifaceted, it's very multi-dimensional, and it's moving constantly. And there's so much to keep up as a journalist. So if we think that we're really cool because we're carrying these very sophisticated gadgets and we're, you know, Facebooking live to large audiences and sort of covering the issue, we're wrong. You now need to focus on the big picture, and you also need to focus on something very specific because you have audiences on various platforms. And online journalism has different platforms too. Your audience is different if they come to your site. And that audience is quite different if you are trying to reach them through social media. Your Telegram audience is very different from your Facebook audience. And people exchange views and debate differently on Facebook than on Telegram. People go for something else on YouTube. People use Twitter for a specific purpose. So if we grew up thinking that the kind of journalism I want to do is to address the masses, all the Uzbeks of the world on a daily basis, through radio, through television, then now my job, for example, is to think, how am I going to reach those Uzbeks on Telegram? How am I going to reach those Uzbeks who watch me just on YouTube? And there are new platforms that are emerging too. So the way to look at this, at the growth of online journalism, at its challenges, is that this is a never-ending challenge. I must constantly grow and learn as much as possible. I must gear myself to constantly move forward, gain new skills, gain new knowledge, study the audience, do my own research about who is watching me, why, or following me and why. Or we can just choose a specific path and just walk on that line. My advice to many emerging journalists is that think about what you really want to do. You know, journalists who want to accomplish everything at the same time, who want to have audiences all over the place. Basically, they want to have a TV audience, they want to have a radio audience, they want to have a paper audience, they want to have a social media audience. That means you obviously need resources, but you also need to be really good at time management, But most importantly, you need to manage the expectations of your audience. So sometimes being specific and just be on one path is more effective than trying to be everywhere else. And that's something that the global media are facing too. You know, you need to figure out where do you want to be in the future. Do you want to be just digital, which means you want to engage audiences through digital platforms, or do you still want to be on traditional platforms like on TV channels, on radio stations? Those are the big questions, and based on that you strategize. But for any young journalist who's now studying at this university and is wondering about what am I going to do next, I would say think about who you really want to reach and shape that audience.